Chairman.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this virtual meeting of Bassett-Law Planning Committee. A particular welcome to members of the public who may be tuning in this evening. I should explain that emergency legislation was passed through Parliament a long time ago now, March 20, to enable us to meet virtually, as indeed all council meetings are at the moment. So that gives us our authority to meet tonight and to take decisions. My name's Councillor Dave Pidwell and I'm chairing the meeting tonight. And my first task is to make sure that members and officers are connected. So this is a sort of way of introduction to those who will be participating this evening. So I'm going to go around in alphabetical order to make sure that we are connected. So, Councillor Brand.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Challoner.
Present, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Charlesworth.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley.
Present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders.
Good evening, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Present, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Tomlinson.
Present, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And our Vice Chair, Councillor Fielding.
Present, Chair.
Okay, lovely, good. So that means there are 12 of us tonight who will be voting on one application before us. Let's introduce officers now, commencing with Mr. Krozak. Are you with us?
I'm present, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Krozak is our head planner. Our lead solicitor is Mr. Wormald. Are you with us?
I am, I'm present, Chair.
Thank you. Our clerk for this evening, the one who will be taking the minutes and recording the vote, Mr. Lavender.
Present, Chair, thank you.
And our facilitator is Ellen Hinsley.
Present, Chair.
Okay, and Ellen's responsible for keeping the whole thing going. But if we do lose connection, I will adjourn for 5 minutes to enable us to reconnect and then reconvene. Thank you. I should explain that that hasn't happened very often in the 12, 13 months that we've been doing this. Okay, so shall we move on to item 1, which is apologies. Are there any apologies?
We have received no apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 is to receive declarations of interest by members and officers. Mr. Wormald, have you received any?
Chair, I haven't received any declarations of interest, but I'm aware Councillor Brand will be speaking on the planning application as ward member, so won't be participating in that item as a member of Planning Committee.
That's quite right. Thank you very much. I also have to declare, I don't know if it's an interest, but I should declare a conflict in that I'm a friend of one of the speakers tonight. I have taken legal advice on whether I should share that agenda item, and I'm told that I may do on 2 conditions. One is to assert that I am not predetermined in this matter, and the second is to assert that the friend and I have had no conversations at any time about this item at all. Okay. Agenda item number 3 is minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday the 3rd of March this year, which are on pages 5 to 7 of the agenda. I will take it that this is a true record of... Sorry if people are hearing feedback. Anyway, I take it that this is a true record of that meeting, unless anyone wishes to speak to the contrary. No, I will take that as a true record of the meeting then. Agenda item number 4 is the minutes of Planning Consultation Group meeting held from the 22nd of February to the 6th of April this year, and they're found on pages 9 to 33 of the agenda. These minutes are provided for information only. And I should explain to any members of the public that the Planning Consultation Group is a subcommittee of our committee which looks at non-major applications. Agenda item number 5 is the outstanding minutes list on page 35, and I'd invite people to note the contents of that. Agenda item number 6, which I know is a matter of some interest to members, is a verbal update from Mr. Wormold on the future of planning committee meetings. So I'd invite Mr. Wormold to make a statement, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Hopefully members may have received an email from the Chief Executive this afternoon, because judgment has been given today in the case where lawyers acting on behalf of local authorities were seeking a declaration that remote meetings could continue under existing legislation. Unfortunately, members who have seen that email will be aware that that application has actually failed and it's been dismissed. So we are back to the position now where the regulations allowing remote local authority meetings to be held will actually lapse on the 6th of May. And thereafter, we are in a position where any meetings that do need to be held and decisions taken will require members to be present and voting in the same room, and so physically present. So effectively we will fall back on the existing legislation, which, as the judgment today has now found, doesn't allow for remote meetings. I can't really say a lot more about future plans, because as the Chief Executive has updated members today, you know, this is literally news that's hot off the press. We're planning to meet shortly and have discussion with the leadership about the way forward. The immediate issue that's facing us is the holding of an AGM in May, because that falls after the regulations lapse, and it is a meeting that we are required by law to have, and decisions as to you know, appointments to committees, etc., have to be made. So that will be the first priority for the authority. Thereafter, we'll obviously have to give consideration and make decisions on how we're going to hold other meetings, including the planning committee in the future. So apologies, I can't really give much more information than that, other than to say we are now in a position where we know the regulations will lapse on the 6th of May. This legal challenge has failed, so you know we do know now that we are going to be in a position where any meetings held after the 6th of May will have to be held in person.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I will invite any member who may have a question or comment to make. No? Okay. Well, thank you for that. Agenda item number 7 is a verbal update from the Planning Development Manager, Mr. Kozak, regarding the scheduled Planning Committee training, which is due to take place in May. So, Mr. Kozak, do you want to update us on that, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief update on this one. The member training will be scheduled for the 21st of May, which is a Friday. Hopefully I'll be seeing you all present on that morning. We're going to run it by officers this year. Feedback from Councillor Pidwell was that he'd like to see officers maybe run the training session. So we'll be giving an overview of the planning system, future changes to the planning system, and the Highway Authority and Education Authority of the County Council will be attending to give brief presentations and also field any questions from members. So obviously that will help assist in decision taking in the future. Hopefully we will be running that by teams. That's the plan at the moment. Obviously it isn't necessary to take any decisions during that training exercise. It is literally just training, so there's no requirement for us to meet formally. And obviously it's much more sustainable and allows members to attend from their own home, and it keeps everybody much safer than having to attend in person. So hopefully I'll see you all on the morning of Friday the 21st. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions on what we've just heard?
Chair, if I may, Councillor Sanders.
Yes, Councillor Sanders, yeah.
If I may, there's an AGM between now and then, so the makeup of the committee may change. Is it potentially, John, that you could invite members that are no longer members of the planning committee along to that training? Because maybe other members would be interested in listening to that. So would that be possible?
Previous training sessions, Councillor Sanders, we've actually invited all members along. So if there are any interested parties, just for a learning experience who are interested in the planning system, we do invite everybody along, and it's very useful to have a wider range of members involved in that training and their input as well.
Okay, are there any other comments from members? No. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so agenda item number 8A is the public interest test. Mr. Dave Armiger, head of regeneration and acting chief exec, or no, deputy chief exec, has deemed that all the reports on this agenda are not confidential. Okay, so we get to the one application for tonight. No, we don't. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Item 8B is to do with appeals. And we've had one appeal come in this last period. And it concerned the roundabout at the new Asda in Worksop at the junction of Sandy Lane and Shire Oaks Road. The company wanted to put up some advertising hoardings. It was refused planning permission. They took us to appeal and they won on appeal. So I'd just like to invite Mr. Kozak to say anything more on that, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a very, very brief summary. As you've stated, the supermarket did apply for 4 identical non-illuminated signs on the roundabout at the junction of Sandy Lane, Shire Oaks Road. Advertisement consent was refused by officers on the grounds that we felt that the signage proposed would result in a proliferation of signage in the area, and it was unnecessary advertising for the store given its visibility from the road and the existing signage in the area. The inspector took a contrary view and felt that given the modest size of the signs and existing signage in the area, there was no reason to withhold advertisement consent, so he did allow the appeal. Obviously, our concern is that this may set a precedent for future forward advertising on roundabouts in the future, but obviously every application does have to be considered on its own merits, and the impact of future applications will be considered at the time as they're submitted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any observations on that item? I take that as a no. So now we can move on to the agenda item number A. It's the planning application that we have this evening. It's located on land west of 16's Close, Misterton. This is a full planning application for the erection of 9 detached dwellings and garages, including new access. The report for this can be found on pages 43 to 60 of the agenda. And I will pause to allow Councillor Brand to leave the meeting, or to leave the committee at any rate.
Yeah, Chair, I thought that I was leaving.
Yes, yes, you can confirm that you are now a member of in the public gallery, as it were, rather than sat around the table.
Yes, and I will leave the meeting by turning off my camera.
Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Crozat, would you like to outline the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Is everybody able to see the slides on the screen at the moment that I'm currently sharing?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Not yet, John, no.
Okay, I'll just give it a moment, Councillor Oxby. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to load up for certain members. Has that appeared now?
No.
Okay, would you like me to carry on, Chairman?
I've got my papers anyway, Chairman.
Okay.
I've got everything in the agenda book. Thank you.
Thank you. So this application is for the construction of 9 4-bedroom detached dwellings and garages, including a new access onto Dean's Close. The application site, outlined in red, is an area of open land that is bounded by existing residential development. This slide shows the application site and shows how the site lies in the context of the settlement. The area surrounding the site is characterised by a mixed character of dwellings. Dean's Close to the south of the site is characterised by detached dwellings, and Old Forge Road to the north is characterised by smaller detached and semi-detached dwellings. Ashdown Way, which lies to the east of the site, is characterised by detached brick-built dwellings, and Minster Road, which lies further to the south of Dean's Close, is a cul-de-sac of bungalows. To the west and northwest of the site backs onto the rear of more traditional properties which front onto original village streets. This slide shows a site plan of the area and shows the variation in the size of residential curtilage and dwellings which surround the site and characterise the surrounding area. This is slide that shows the proposed layout of the development proposed. The development would be served by a new point of access onto Dean's Close. The 9 dwellings would form a cul-de-sac that would be constructed to an adoptable standard for approximately half its length, with the remainder being a private drive. The proposed dwellings are detached, contemporary suburban house types, and I'll now show you the house types proposed. As stated, these are all detached dwellings. There is a mixture of house types, but they are fairly homogeneous in character, similar architectural detailing. So moving on to the photographs of the site and surroundings, this slide shows a photograph which is looking into the site from the site access from Dean's Close. Number 6 Dean's Close is on the right hand side of the photograph here. This photograph is taken from the access point itself and looks in a westerly direction across the site. So to the right of the photograph is 6 Dean's Close, and then beyond that is the dwellings of Old Forge Road. Photograph which is looking in a westerly direction along Dean's Close, so you can see the site access toward the right hand side of the photograph, and then on the left hand side is the unadopted highway of Dean's Close. This again is a photograph looking in a westerly direction along Dean's Close. So the detached properties that front onto Dean's Close are to the left of this photo, and the site lies beyond the hedgerow on the right hand side. This photograph is looking from within the site, so the southern site boundary, and is looking in a roughly northerly direction toward the rear of the properties on Old Forge Road. This is a photograph looking in an almost easterly direction, and the rear of the property you can see, and the side of elevation of the property is that of 6 Dean's Close, and you can see the site access just on the rear, the right hand side of the photograph there. Returning to the content of the report, consultee comments are set out within the report on pages 45 to 47. It should be noted there are no objections from statutory consultees. Misterton Parish Council have raised an objection to the proposal, and this objection is summarised on page 47. There are 9 letters of objection that have been received from members of the public, and these comments are also summarised on page 47. Just for members' information, we have received further comments yesterday from 6 nearby residents, and they were raising concerns that had already been raised previously in the consultation responses, but there was a request to adjourn the meeting for a minimum of 14 days to allow all parties to have reasonable time to consider the committee report. There's concern that there hadn't been a full notification of surrounding residents, and they requested full details of all parties notified in writing of the application. And they stated that they'd reserve the right to refer to any correspondence in future proceedings and in relation to any costs. Just to quickly address those points that have been raised, obviously it would be a decision for members to defer the planning application if they felt they didn't have sufficient information to determine the application during this meeting. And in terms of consultations undertaken, the Development Management Procedure Order does state that we are required to notify adjoining owners and occupiers or post a site notice in relation to an application of this nature. In this instance, we did notify adjoining neighbours and landowners, posted a site notice, and we did notify, we did also publicise the application in the local press. So we have exceeded the statutory notification requirements in this instance. Moving on to the body of the report now. In terms of the principle of development, page 48 of the report sets out that whilst policy CS1 is considered to carry limited weight in the decision-making process, the Misterton Neighbourhood Plan is made and therefore forms the most up-to-date development plan for the settlement. To be clear, the site is not allocated in the neighbourhood plan, but it does lie within the defined settlement boundary. Policy 5 of the neighbourhood plan, windfall development, does support proposals for residential development within the development boundary, subject to certain criteria being met. So it's therefore considered that the fundamental principle of the development is acceptable. In terms of design and layout, page 49 of the Misterton neighbourhood profile forms part of the neighbourhood plan and identifies the site within profile area zone 2, where the majority of properties are post-war with some older properties positioned around the church. The application site is centrally located within the central area of profile zone 2. One of the key recommendations in more central locations of this zone is that brick-built detached houses are more appropriate and in keeping with this part of the character zone. The proposed dwellings are detached contemporary suburban type houses, and given the mixed character of the surrounding area and the recommendations within the neighbourhood profile, it is considered that the development would not result in harm to the character of the surrounding area. In terms of residential amenity, excuse me, page 50 of the report provides an assessment of the impact of the proposal upon residential amenity of the surrounding residents. The proposed dwellings would be well separated from the existing properties that surround the site, with the rear of the proposed dwellings being approximately 30 metres from the front elevations of the existing dwellings of Dean Close, and similar separation distance would be achieved to the properties on Old Forge Road. It's considered that this would ensure that occupiers of existing properties would retain adequate privacy and would not be excessively overshadowed by the dwellings proposed. In terms of access, as stated, access to the site will be provided by a new access driveway that extends from a priority junction onto the south of 16's Close. A section of adopted highway will extend into the site, with plots 4 to 9 being served from a private driveway. Page 51 of the report sets out that the Highway Authority have raised no objections to this scheme, subject to the imposition of conditions to ensure that the proposal is delivered in an appropriate manner. In terms of the impact of the development on trees, pages 51 and 52 sets out that some trees to the southern boundary of the site are subject to a tree preservation order and are considered to make a valuable contribution to the visual amenity and quality of the surrounding area. The applicant has submitted a detailed tree survey, constraint plan and tree protection plan. The council's tree officer has commented that he has no objections to the proposal, provided that the ash trees that are subject to the tree preservation order are adequately protected for the duration of the construction period. In terms of housing mix, some concerns have been raised regarding the housing mix proposed. Policy 4 of the neighbourhood plan states that planning applications for housing schemes of more than 10 dwellings will be supported where they would deliver a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom properties. Given this proposal is below the threshold set by neighbourhood plan policy 4, it's considered that there are no conflicts with the neighbourhood plan in this respect, and the development would offer suitable dwelling types. In conclusion, pages 54 and 55 of the report set out that the proposal would not result in any harm to the character of the surrounding area or street scene and would not have an unacceptable impact upon the living conditions of any of the neighbouring occupiers. It's also considered that the development would not result in a detriment to highway safety or flood risk, and the imposition of conditions would ensure that existing trees at the site would be suitably protected and provide ecological and biodiversity enhancements. The development proposed would also offer a suitable mix of dwelling types having regard to the character of the surrounding area. As such, the scheme is considered to comply with the policies contained within the neighbourhood plan and the Bassett Law local development framework, and it's therefore recommended that planning permission is granted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. For the benefit of members of the public, committee members get the report a week before committee, and we are encouraged to submit any questions we might have on it ahead of the meeting in order to speed up proceedings. And I understand that there have been a number of questions submitted to Mr. Crozak, and I'd like you, please, John, to give a summary of the questions and your responses to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to summarise the questions received, we have received questions regarding the status of the neighbourhood plan, the need for 2 to 3 bedroom dwellings, how the development fits into the character of the surrounding area, the width of the road proposed, the impact of the road on surrounding trees, whether members could amend the condition in respect of the parking space for 16's Close, and why larger dwellings are being supported when there are smaller properties in the vicinity of the site. In response, officers confirmed that the neighbourhood plan is made and forms a development plan for the area and therefore carries full weight. The recommendation in the neighbourhood profile report is for detached brick-built dwellings in this character zone. The width of the road itself would be 5 metres, with the adoptable section also having a 2-metre footway. Any future impact on the adopted road by nearby trees would be a matter for the Highway Authority, as they would be responsible for maintaining the carriageway. Members would be able to amend any conditions should they consider it necessary. And it was also confirmed that whilst the area has a mixed character, the neighbourhood plan does recommend detached dwellings in this character zone. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now move to the speakers for tonight, and we have 6 people wishing to speak. The first of which is Councillor Brand. Councillor Brand is the ward member. So when you're ready, Councillor, well, you know the drill. You have 3 minutes, and you will get a 30-second reminder when your time's nearly at an end. So when you're ready, Councillor, please go.
Thank you, Chair. I urge members to reject this planning application for the following reasons. The Misterton Neighbourhood Plan, made into September 2019, carries full weight, and in the absence of an up-to-date core strategy is the most recent document with legal standing. This site was not put forward in the call for sites and was not therefore considered in the careful evaluation for possible inclusion in the neighbourhood plan. 15 sites were put forward, subsequently trimmed down to 9, then 5, following public consultation and rigorous evaluation of each. This followed assessment against 10 criteria, see page 26 of the neighbourhood plan. I'm not saying, nor is the community, that this site couldn't be considered in the future. We are aware of other local landowners that wish to be considered, but we believe all must be subject to the same rigorous evaluation as the 15 sites. At some point, there will be another call for sites. This site could be put forward and that evaluation carried out. Otherwise, if it is approved, it is to landowners' benefit not to engage with the neighbourhood plan process. Policy 1 of the neighbourhood plan, page 15, refers to 6 criteria against which development will be supported. These are the fundamental principles of development in Misterton. Applications need to meet just one of them. This application doesn't meet any. You've seen on the map the site plan outlined in red with a dotted blue area to the west. This site borders a listed farmhouse, refurbishment of which is another application, 21/00386, and an application for, quotes, demolition of a barn and outbuildings and erecting a detached dwelling, 21/00385. Members may not be aware of these applications, and the fact that they are in the same ownership, they are adjacent to the site under discussion. The 3 should be considered in conjunction with each other. 21/00385 includes a new dwelling. That makes sufficient requirement for affordable housing. The application under consideration for 9 dwellings is a cynical attempt to get out of providing any affordable housing and to consider the housing mix by splitting the site into 3. The Misterton Neighbourhood Plan was approved by 91.5% of residents, one of the highest ratings in Bassetlaw. It has been put to me that the number is a minimum of the houses in the neighbourhood plan, but this figure has been developed following the District Council's own process. It's also been suggested that the Misterton neighbourhood plan is open to interpretation. I believe there is no one better to interpret the plan than those who worked on it for 3 years and the community that voted for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brand. Second speaker this evening is Mr. Peter Marsden, speaking on behalf of the Parish Council, and I understand that he will be speaking against. Are you here, Mr. Marsden?
I've just admitted him, so give him a minute.
You need to unmute, I think, Peter. Peter, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. Okay, so you two will have 3 minutes, and as you just heard, you'll get a reminder at the 30-second stage before your time elapses. So, when you're ready, please start.
Okay, thank you. I have several concerns relating to this application. On the site layout drawing, number 11121E, it states quite clearly that the dry ditch is to be culverted as necessary. This ditch should have been culverted prior to forming the temporary access road. The Land Drainage Act 1991 states any watercourse should not be blocked or obstructed, and the District Council has powers of enforcement by serving a notice under the Act. The developers show no respect for procedures or normal construction practices. On the same layout drawing, the visibility splay is shown for the Old Forge Road side, but not for the private Dean's Close side. It is going to be very difficult to see any traffic approaching the junction from this side, as they will be coming from almost from behind. This is a dangerous situation and needs addressing. In the design and access statement document, it states that all the dwellings match the existing surrounding dwellings. Whilst the house types may be comparable in size with those on the private section of Dean's Close, they are nowhere near being comparable with those on Old Forge Road. Large 4-bedroom houses of this quality are not suitable for this location in Misterton. No provision has been made for site accommodation, toilet facilities and a laydown area for the whole of the construction period. No explanation has been given as to how the large number of delivery vehicles carrying machines and materials will be able to travel safely through this well-populated residential estate. If the intention is to use 7 Gringley Road for access to this site, then clearly it should be considered as part of this application. The 11 conditions from the Principal Highways Officer shows that he has reservations on this development. Importantly, all vehicles preparing to leave the site during the construction period shall have their wheels thoroughly washed to prevent mud and debris being transported onto the public highway as per the Highways Act 1980. The applicant has made no provision to prevent this occurring. Not wishing to duplicate anything, but the Misterton Parish Council supports additional comments from the Neighbourhood Plan Steering Group and Ward and District Councillors. I expect the Planning Department to ensure that all the items mentioned are addressed before even considering granting planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marsden. Our first speaker this evening is Gail Collette from the Neighbourhood Planning Group. Gail, can we hear you?
Oops.
Gail, can we hear you?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. Okay. You too will have 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second reminder. So when you're ready, please start.
We strongly object to the proposed development on the basis of the following. Firstly, policy 5 of our plan does allow for windfall development, defined in the NPPF as sites which have not specifically been identified as available in the local plan. However, the planning portal, supported by the Department for Communities and Local Government, defines windfall in their glossary as sites that are not only those that are not specifically identified in plans, but ones that normally comprise of a previously developed site that has unexpectedly become available. It was this definition we understood would be employed in utilising our plan, as windfall was primarily included to allow for the issue of Newells to be addressed. Newells is the site of a former factory that was demolished some years ago and is a much complained of major eyesore in the village. In our consultation questionnaire, 96% of residents wanted new housing development on previously developed sites, which were now unused, and this is the purpose of windfall in our plan. Secondly, our plan makes it clear, page 12, paragraph 8.1, and I quote, that if the national or district policy position changes before 2035, it is expected that since the proposals in this plan meet local need and are locally supported, additional site allocations within the village are unnecessary unless it can be shown that local need has increased or that there is community support for further growth. Where this is the case, it's likely that this neighbourhood plan will be reviewed. Thirdly, the village has a number of undeveloped areas of land within the settlement boundary that help retain its rural field. If a site can be classified as windfall merely by not being specified in local plans, it would mean that all sites could be seen as eligible for development. The Misterton Neighbourhood Plan has specifically allocated sites to meet the housing targets set by BDC. These allocations were repeatedly consulted on to ensure they were supported by local residents, a foundation of neighbourhood planning. To conclude, windfall policies are not there to be used to enable development by the back door, avoiding the consultative process which underpins neighbourhood planning. To allow such a use undermines the whole point of site allocations, leaving those involved in the neighbourhood plan process believing their work was pointless and does significant harm to public confidence in the planning process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Our fourth speaker this evening is Nicola Smith, an objector. Are you with us, Nicola? Can you hear us, Nicola? We can't hear you.
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, we can hear you now, although you are fairly faint. Can we do a sound level one more time, please, before we start you?
I've just plugged in my headset. That might work better. Does that work better?
Brilliant. Yeah, loud and clear.
Right.
So, Nicola, you too have 3 minutes. So when you're ready, please start.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay here. Yes, thank you very much for letting me join today. I'm representing the residents who are strongly objecting, and what I hope to do is go through the short summary, and then hopefully with the limited time we've got available, I can give you a little bit more information around the key points that we're objecting to. I trust I don't need to go through the numerous objections that are actually filed by the local residents, as clearly 3 minutes is not going to be time available to do this. But I do note that it was said that there was 9 objections. I think that that's actually incorrect, and that actually there was 11, but also noting the fact that there was only a few lines of support, and that was actually from the person who sold 16s close to the applicant. So really, I feel that that as a person has a vested interest in the application being granted. We're objecting on a number of grounds. One is, as it was highlighted earlier, failure to statutory notification. We do not believe that anybody who has a property that is who owns a property that is adjoining or linked to that site has actually been formally notified, myself being one of them. But even the lady in the house that's actually adjoining number 6 Dean's Close has not actually had a formal notification. And in fact, you'll see from the pictures that you saw of the private road, the only notification that actually went on was on that lamppost. And that went on at Christmas time, in the worst ever Christmas, when people were actually in tier 4 and actually been told to stay at home. So as you see, it's a cul-de-sac. It's not a pedestrian access. So actually, it was a good job. Somebody actually spotted it, because if not, it would have been totally missed. We also wanted to pick up the complete disregard that actually the builder had to air quality, habitats, wildlife and ecology ahead of the planning application being submitted. This builder arrived actually to clear his land. Whilst we were in a national lockdown, it was clear that this land was actually going to be used for building, and really that activity shouldn't have occurred. It was also setting fires, felling trees. The culvert that you talked about there was actually filled with hardcore and actually caused the lady at number 4's pictures to fall off. There was actually an enforcement position inquiry over that access, and all this was done ahead of the application going in. The previous application did highlight that in fact that culvert was a potential for great crested newts. There is bats. There is also birds nesting.
Okay, Nicola, sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off there. But
okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our 5th speaker tonight is County Councillor Tracy Taylor. Are you with us, Councillor?
Can you hear me, David?
Ah, yes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, good evening. Okay, well, you're an old hand at this, so you know you've got 3 minutes. So when you're ready, please start.
Thank you. Bassetlaws local plan is acknowledged as out of date, with little to no weight afforded by it or the emerging plan. Misterton's Made neighbourhood plan is the strongest planning document offering any protection here. It clearly identifies the sites and housing types wanted and needed, which is 2 and 3 bedroomed units, including bungalows and affordable housing. Councillor Brand referenced that development would be supported for applications satisfying just one of the 6 criteria of Plan Policy 1. This meets none. The residential criteria are new homes of a size, type and tenure to meet local requirements, and affordable housing of size and tenure to meet local need. Others around leisure and business developments do not apply here. The application site is for one part of a single land holding, for which 2 further applications are currently live. Those other applications deal with a listed building and associated outbuildings, which English Heritage note as of significant relevance. That has been totally discounted in the Conservation Officer's response. If the 3 applications for this single land holding succeed, it will result in 11 dwellings, above the planned threshold at which developments are classed as major. This split approach not only pretends the numbers are below key trigger points, it also limits scrutiny of the listed building's significance. The officer's report tables 5 points to assess the scheme. These are weak and do not make the planning case either individually or cumulatively. 9 houses is irrelevant given Bassetlaw's 10.5-year supply and Misterton's existing contribution to it. All development brings new residents who use services. There's no special benefit to Misterton deriving from this site, and it cannot carry significant weight. Plan Policy 5 windfall development is being fudged in respect of unacceptable harm and character of the locality. And finally, it has to be of great concern that significant weight is being afforded around revenues to Bassetlaw through SIL council tax and new homes bonus. This cannot be the overriding basis on which planning decisions are made in Bassetlaw, or all will pass. This application and the officer's report attempt to discount key policies of the plan and your decision here has huge significance for the future standing of this made neighbourhood plan. Please do not approve an application that does not meet the aims of the neighbourhood plan in terms of housing type and size, should not be treated as windfall. It is not previously developed land and will cause unacceptable harm, including to the listed buildings, and is within a land holding that together should be considered as a major site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. This brings us to our final speaker tonight, Graham Rayner. Graham, can you hear us?
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes. Good, thank you.
Excellent.
And Mr. Rayner is the agent and speaking in favour of the application. And you two have 3 minutes, Mr. Rayner. So when you're ready, please start.
I thought protocol was that the objectors spoke first and I responded.
They have spoken.
Oh, right.
Better pause. Yeah.
I wasn't allowed into the meeting to hear them.
Oh, right. Okay. Well,
I can make my presentation if you like, based on
yes,
the
please. Yeah.
objections.
So we'll start the clock again when you start to speak.
Okay, thank you. Well, my name is Graham Rayner. I'm a member of the Royal Town Planning Institute and I act for the applicant in this matter. A little bit of history to the site. There's been no previous planning applications, but the site was allocated for development as long ago as 1993 in a document called the Local Plan Draft Consultation Draft. Part of that allocation was actually built. The 5 dwellings off the end of Dean's Close were built as part of that allocation. And the application presently before you today is the remainder of that site. Dealing first of all with the neighbourhood plan and the principle of the development, the proposed development is entirely consistent with the neighbourhood plan, in particular policy 5 of the plan, which supports windfall development within the confines of the village, subject to certain criteria, all of which are satisfied. These matters are all dealt with by the planning officer in the report. The windfall policy in the neighbourhood plan and the draft local plan is consistent with government guidance in the NPPF, which establishes the principle of the presumption in favour of sustainable development. The application site is in an extremely sustainable location, and therefore the presumption is in favour. And therefore, that's very, very important starting point prior to considering the more detailed matters, which I'll go on to now. As far as highways are concerned, I know local residents have expressed concern about the access. Well, the first thing we did prior to preparing detailed drawings for this scheme was to engage with the County Council highway engineers, and as a result of that there is an agreement with the Highway Authority as to the position and the design and an arrangement for the access, and as confirmed in the the planning officer's report, they don't have any objections to the proposed development. There are a matter of other matters, all of which are dealt with positively, with the recommendation to grant permission by the case officer. They think it's probably fair to go perhaps seconds left. Thank you. To conclude, therefore, I think it's probably best to go straight to the planning officer's conclusion in the report by saying that the proposal, by virtue of its design and appearance, is not harmful to the character of the surrounding area or street scene, will not have an unacceptable impact on the living conditions of any of the neighbouring occupiers. It is also considered that the development would not result in a detriment to highway safety or flood risk, and the imposition of conditions would ensure that the existing trees on the site will be suitably protected and provide ecological and biodiversity enhancement. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Rayner. Thank you for keeping to time, everybody. Okay, I will now go around the members and invite questions and comments from them. What we do here is we go round a total of 3 times if needed. First 2 times is for each member to ask questions, which Mr. Crozak gives an answer to or an explanation to. And the 3rd time is for any remaining comments to be made before we proceed to the vote. So I come to Councillor Challoner first.
Thanks, Chair. After listening to everybody and obviously the presentation by the planning officer, it's one of them. Where do you start? Because first of all, when you look at things in the context, where vehicles are going to be pulling onto this site, once again, I feel that it's in such a dangerous position because a lorry or a vehicle could be pulling out slow from where it's deemed the access to be, and a vehicle could be coming up fairly quick from that road to what was to the left-hand side of this junction. But my main concern is this, that during the pandemic, these developers have gone onto that land when it was essential workers only that were allowed to do things. So how did this get deemed essential work to go and rip a hedgerow out during this time? Why wasn't the question that I would like to ask the planning officer on this, if it got reported that this was taking place, why didn't the council act and go and stop the developer from ripping this hedgerow out during a time when the government guideline was, if it's not deemed as essential work, it shouldn't be done?
Mr. Crozak.
We did investigate alleged breaches of planning control, Councillor Challoner, and that was deemed essential work by the government. In terms of people undertaking any work during the pandemic, it isn't for the local planning authority to enforce. Unfortunately, we can only enforce any breaches under the Town and Country Planning Act and associated legislation. So obviously other concerns have been raised this evening. The trees that are subject to the tree preservation order weren't removed. There were some minor operations undertaken on site and site clearance, as we've already heard about, but obviously caused a lot of concern to local residents. But in terms of people working on the site, unfortunately, we can't enforce the coronavirus regulations.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come back now, Councillor Challoner, or later?
Just on that. So
yeah.
I've just lost my trail of thought, so I'll come back with the question later on the second round, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Charlesworth, do you have any questions or comments at this stage?
I just have a comment. I'm a bit like Councillor Challenger. I'm concerned over the road, the access to the roads. I feel that listening to the residents, it's been very unorganised, not enough information put out. And again, why are people allowed to work on land? I know Mr. Crozak's explained that, but I still don't agree with how this has all been handled. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fielding, do you have any questions at this stage?
Just clarification on a couple of the speakers said about drainage being altered. I mean, is that permissible before you put in for planning when supposedly whatever you're doing would be a sustainable drainage system, but to be altering things prior to a planning application in, and evident, and the other aspect was to do with the fact there's adjacent sites in the same ownership. What effect is that going to have on as I say, if we granted this particular one, and it's we've got this development is for 9, but if you take the others into account, it goes above the threshold. It feels quite uncomfortable, the fact that you know, if the others were taken into account, it would be above the threshold.
Thank you. Mr. Krozak, any response to that?
So in terms of the drainage that you've just referred to, excuse me, there is a drainage ditch that extends around the boundary of the site, so where the hedgerow is. It appears that the developer made a temporary site access by depositing some hardcore into that ditch. We've obviously got to consider whether that is operational development that would constitute the need for planning permission. It is a temporary access. The access itself doesn't need permission. And if planning permission is granted tonight, the Internal Drainage Board has requested that a condition is imposed requiring a drainage scheme for both surface water and foul drainage. So that would have to be implemented in accordance with details that would have to be approved by the Internal Drainage Board. In terms of your, what was the second point again? Sorry.
The second point was when a developer divides it into 3 schemes, and therefore is avoiding it being over 10. As I say, it does seem it does. You know, I can see that that does make it so that other aspects of the neighbourhood plan can't come into force because it isn't over 10. But it doesn't seem to be working with the community at all.
I do appreciate your concerns on that point, and where we see piecemeal development forming a larger development, we always seek Section 106 contributions when we deem it necessary. So if there's a development of 5 dwellings served from a driveway, for example, and then a second application is submitted for 7 dwellings, we'd certainly be seeking contributions in that instance. Here we have a development of 9 dwellings that's served from Dean's Close. It's obviously a new cul-de-sac that's proposed, and the development that is proposed at 7 Gringley Road is currently under consideration. We consider that to be an entirely separate development, so we don't consider this to be a piecemeal development. So that proposal is for the demolition of the barn and outbuildings and erect a detached dwelling. So this site, cumulatively with that one, would be a development of, so there's 10 new dwellings proposed in total, but the proposal at 7 Gringley Road addresses Gringley Road and is no way linked to this new cul-de-sac that's being proposed. And as I've stated, where we do see piecemeal development and it's an obvious attempt by a developer to not pay Section 106 obligations, we always consult with the necessary consultees to see what obligations are required and take it as a single development. But in this instance, officers don't consider that is the case.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Chairman. No questions, just some comments and observations, if I may, please, with your permission. Chairman, on the face of it, this application, in my opinion, appears to be wholly inappropriate and purely speculative in purpose. It seems, Chairman, to completely disregard the needs of the village, and it appears, as I read it, Chairman, to be completely, and I use the word reservedly, it completely appears to disrespect the neighbourhood plan process. And I think that's a serious matter of concern, Chairman, for us as people making decisions. It must make people that work on neighbourhood plans the officers that deal with it, the experts that deal with it, the village and the villagers that contribute to it must feel that their opinions are not being taken seriously when you see this kind of development coming as it is. So I have nothing to add at this stage, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Quigley.
Councillor Chair, sorry. Did you go to Councillor Freeman?
Oh, no. Thank you very much, James. My abject apologies, Councillor Freeman.
I can't hear you very well, but I can't hear you very well, but I don't like the access, and I think it's what about the hedgerows? Are they ripping them up, or they, you know? And I think they should put weight on for the neighbourhood plan, and they should have had more consultation. That's my opinion. So whether it counts or not, I do not know. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Mr. Crozat, there's certainly a question there about hedgerows.
We'd anticipate that the majority of trees and hedgerows on the site are going to be retained. Their tree survey and protection plan does demonstrate that the trees and hedgerows can largely be retained, and the tree office is satisfied with that. There are conditions imposed regarding tree protection, and we're also imposing conditions requiring details of the external boundary of treatments of the site, where all the trees and hedgerows are present. As you've seen on the photos, the site is largely devoid of any trees within the body of the site, and those trees and hedgerows are on the borders.
Thank you. Now it's Councillor Quigley's turn, I believe.
Thanks, Chairman. We are here today to weigh up the evidence presented to us as members of the Planning Committee, and make our own decision about what we think of the neighbourhood plan. And from what I've heard this evening, I think that the neighbourhood plan has been well thought out and well received by the local population. And this application attempts to drive a coach and horses through that neighbourhood plan, which is not only disappointing, but also annoying, I think, for the residents of Misterton. And I certainly, on the evidence I've heard, would bear down on the side of the neighbourhood plan and the comments I've heard from the objectors this evening, rather than the presentation by the developer's agent. I haven't got any questions, and I probably haven't got any more comments at this stage, but if anything does crop up later, then I probably will stick my hand up again. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richardson, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Chair. Comments. The neighbourhood plan, I think I agree completely, and I've written quite several notes on here about what the neighbourhood plan does, the hard work that's done, 3 years in making, and altering, and allow, you know, they have to go forward and then amend it all the time. And 4-bedroom houses in this site. I do know that site. I go to Misterton. I used to have family that lived in Misterton, some couple of friends, and I know that site. I know where the new houses have been built before. 2 to 3 bedroom houses and bungalows may have been the better solution here. It would keep in with the neighbourhood plan. It would satisfy the needs of the village itself. The houses wouldn't stick out like sore thumbs, and I think they've got enough 4-bedroom houses. And it seems to be, whenever you listen to any politics on TV, 4-bedroom houses, please let's have some that people can live in and afford. And I think in this instance, discussing the neighbourhood plan as the objectors have, I really feel for the village itself and all those people who have actually done the plans. The hedgerows I am very concerned about, because I'm an absolute bird lover, and whether they take them out or not, they take too many out. And the birds don't know that they've got to come back to some new hedgerows that's been put in the place, because they just don't work like that. So that's my concern anyway, but my main concern is all the work in the neighbourhood plan and it not being adhered to. Thanks, Chairman. I don't think I'll have any more comments or questions to make, but I'll just reserve for a little while, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think that brings me on to Councillor Sanders.
It does, Chair, thank you. If I may, I'd like to return to the fact that 2 other applications were brought up by Councillors Brand and Taylor relating to land owned by the developer and I believe adjoining onto the site that we're talking about. Whilst I understand what John said to Councillor Fielding, I do think that it does throw a different light onto the application that we are determining tonight. And I would like to take advice from yourself and maybe officers, but I would like to propose that we defer this application until such time as that we've had chance to have a look at the other 2 applications and how that actually impinges on this one. Although the numbers are low in terms of what we're asking, I believe because of the setting, it is quite a lot of development for that particular area. And I feel that we don't have the whole picture, the whole facts in front of us to actually make an informed decision. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. On the question of deferment, I will come back to that at a later stage, if I may. Certainly finish one round of questioning first, which takes us to Councillor Schuller.
I'm going to start with, I would like to second Councillor Sanders' deferment. I'm looking at this and I really believe that I'm looking at piecemeal development. I'm wondering how the 2 sites work together and how the loss of a barn adjacent to a listed property will provide access to this site. And looking at what Councillor Challoner pointed out, the access that we've seen tonight isn't sufficient for some of the heavy plant that would need to access the site. Therefore, I truly believe that we are looking at piecemeal development. And I also I'm really, really concerned at the lack of weight that the neighbourhood plan is being given. The local residents are calling for 2 to 3 bedroomed properties, and we're looking at a site that has 9 4-bedroomed houses on, and this site would quite clearly be available for many more 2 to 3 bedroomed properties, and would provide the residents what they need and require at this moment in time. So I'm quite concerned about it. I may have further questions and I may have further comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tomlinson, do you have any questions or comments? I need to unmute Bill.
That's it, isn't it? Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a very varied and wide-ranging debate about this application, I think. And a number of concerns, Councillor Schuller and their concerns over whether the neighbourhood plan is being... Councillor Quigley said a coach and horse was being driven through it, which I think probably on the day won't be a bad idea. But we can't have a situation that we've got on several other sites, this is my view, of developments in Retford which were concept, looks good, and now providing us with drainage problems, because that's not the last thing you should consult. It should be the first thing. so that nobody wakes up one morning with 18 inches of water in their lounge. So I think it's most important that we maybe, like Neil has said, defer this till we can have more information and make an actual informed decision, and put the Misterton plan back in the forefront where I think it's designed to be. But that's really all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so it's my turn now. I have two questions, Mr. Prezak. They're about interpretations of the neighbourhood plan, really. I know that at least 3 speakers tonight argued that this application was contrary to policy 1 of the neighbourhood plan because it didn't meet any of the 6 criteria. So the first question is, clearly you disagree with that, and I just wonder if you can explain your reasoning for that objection. And the second relates to policy 5 and the definition of windfall sites. Again, one of the speakers, at least one of the speakers, put forward a definition of windfall site being one that occurs either through subdivision or demolition of existing buildings. And that is an exact quote from the neighbourhood plan, irrespective of whether it's in the NPPF. So how can this, well, as I understand it, this site is not, has not become available through either of those actions. So again, why do you think it is compatible with policy 5, please?
So to address your first point, well, if I can just firstly address the general view on the neighbourhood plan. To be clear, we are giving it full weight. We acknowledge that the neighbourhood plan does form the development plan for the settlement. Obviously, there is dispute between ourselves and the speakers this evening and local residents regarding the policies within the plan. We acknowledge that, and maybe the wording of the policies isn't having the effect that the community wanted. But as professional officers, we have to interpret policy looking at the wording of the policies, and we have to make informed professional decisions and judgments on that, and we make recommendations to committee. And obviously it's a decision for members whether you agree with our recommendations or not. In terms of policy 1, if I can quote directly from page 15 of the neighbourhood plan and the supporting text, it states policy 1 is overarching and is intended to sit alongside the topic-specific policies detailed later in this plan. So that means if you have a certain form of development, you have to refer to the specific policy. So quoting from policy 1, sustainable development, it states the neighbourhood plan takes a positive approach to development where this enhances a balance of housing, employment, retail, etc. All major development over 10 houses over the plan period should safeguard where practicable environmental assets, etc. And then development will be, number 2 is development will be supported where it be shown that such proposals would support the continued sustainability of Misterton by meeting at least one of the following criteria. And this is what Councillor Taylor was referring to. Yeah. New homes of a size, type and tenure to meet local requirements, or affordable housing of a size and tenure to meet the objectively assessed local housing needs of the parish. But then obviously there's those points, and then we move on to policy 5, windfall development. The wording of the plan on page 24 refers to, so this is supporting text. It refers to brownfield land and infill development. 10.22 states that it's probable that over the plan period, sites within the village will come forward for redevelopment or subdivision. Such schemes will still be required to meet design standards and densities as set out in policy 2 and 3 respectively. So if we have a look at policy 5, which is windfall development, proposals for residential development within the development boundary, which this site is, will be supported subject to the following criteria: not cause unacceptable harm to residential amenity of properties in the locality, would be consistent with the character and appearance of the immediate locality, and would provide suitable vehicle access. I think you raised the point, Councillor Pidwell, in your pre-committee questions regarding why officers have fallen on the side of larger dwellings, when we do acknowledge that to the north of the site there are smaller dwellings in the proximity, and is quite a mixed character to the area. So the neighbourhood plan is supported by the neighbourhood profile. So this site lies within profile zone 2. In the centre of that, the neighbourhood profile is a separate document, and a map for the profile zones also appears on page 17 of the neighbourhood plan. Key recommendations, so page 13 of the neighbourhood profile, paragraph 19, it states proposals for residential development in zone 2 should be mostly for bungalows in the western section and close to the border of the developed footprint adjacent to the surrounding rural areas. In more central locations in which this site does fall, it's in the centre of zone 2, detached brick-built houses would be more appropriate and in keeping with this part of zone 2. So that is a specific recommendation within the neighbourhood profile. And obviously our officers are reading these policies, and yeah, we've got to interpret them. Members are obviously entitled to take a contrary view if you see appropriate, but we've given neighbourhood plan full weight, and we've tried to assess that in detail in the report. But we're certainly not trying to ride roughshod over the neighbourhood plan or belittle its intent in any way. That's the last thing we need to do, and it would undermine the entire neighbourhood planning process and discourage communities from pursuing neighbourhood plans in the future. But we're looking at the neighbourhood plan, and we're seeing that it is allowing some infill and windfall development within the settlement boundary. It is preventing, because Misterton and the neighbourhood plan has housing allocations, the neighbourhood plan will prevent the outward sprawl of Misterton settlement form into the countryside, but it is allowing some limited development within the settlement boundary. In terms of the housing mix, again, we refer to the topic specific policy 4, and that states planning applications for housing schemes of more than 10 dwellings will be supported where they deliver a housing mix that reflects the demonstrable needs of the plan area, notably 2 and 3 bedroom properties. Again, this is a development for 9 dwellings. I know some concerns been raised that it is piecemeal development. I can share the site layout and site plan of the site that's fronting Gringley Road if members would like to see that, if that provides any further comfort or explanation as to why officers don't consider this to be piecemeal development. But we do feel that the report sets out why we consider the proposal complies with the policies within the neighbourhood plan. I do acknowledge that the community disagrees with that, and much of that community has been involved in plan making, but we're reading the policies as they've been written and made within this plan.
Thank you for that comprehensive answer. Let me just put it out there that the offer is for us to have a look at the plans for the houses, for the development around the farmhouse and barn. Would people find that useful to quickly view? A nod of the head or a shake of the head?
Chairman?
Yeah.
May I speak, please?
Yes, Councillor Oxley.
Thank you, Chairman. I do understand that there's a proposal and a seconder for a motion to defer, and you did say you was coming on to that, but to me it would seem inappropriate for us to carry on with the meeting and discuss a lot of things if we're then going to defer it for another date. I'm really trying to be helpful. I'm personally not in favour of a deferment, because we heard earlier that had been suggested for varying reasons, that it hadn't been advertised, and John certainly satisfied me that there was no reason to accede to that request. But I'm just trying to be helpful, Chair. Nothing else.
You usually are, Councillor Oxley. I'd forgotten about the proposed deferment. That has got a seconder, so we shall discuss that. Okay. Councillor Sanders, you propose it. Do you want to quickly explain why you want a deferment? Then I'll go to Councillor Schuller, and then I'll throw it open to others.
Yes, Chair, if I may. And as I say, I will listen to colleagues' opinions on this. But I think we don't have the whole picture with regards to the whole site and how this development fits in with what is proposed in that area. And I think it is quite important that we understand as a committee and have the opportunity to scrutinise the proposals to form our own opinion as to whether it's appropriate or whether it's piecemeal development or whatever you'd like to call it. Because at the end of the day, I believe that does impinge on, certainly in the way I would look at this development, and it would certainly help me form a more informed picture of what is being proposed as a whole in Misterton.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Schuller, you second the motion.
I have to say that Councillor Sanders has summed it up quite succinctly, and I've got nothing to add. But I do agree with all of the points that he's made there.
Okay. Is there any member who wants to speak against it? Let's do that next.
Chairman?
Yeah. Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, the connection seems a bit slow tonight. I do apologise. Do you intend taking a vote on this, Chairman? I don't wish to vote against it.
Say that again. Sorry, you broke up.
Sorry, Chairman. Are we there again?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't particularly wish to waste anybody's time speaking against it, Chairman, for a variety of reasons. But I'm interested whether you're going to on this or not. Or are you just taking it that if people don't want to speak against it, they're in favour of deferring it?
No. I'm going to put it to the vote.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I've nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Krozak.
Just in terms of me sharing the plans, Chairman, the intention was to inform members' decision. If members wouldn't like me to, I'm obviously not going to. But it just may inform their decision on this matter. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we might come back to that. Councillor Schuller.
I thank John for actually offering to share the plans, but I think we need to have time to take a good look at the plans and to consider all of the options that are being offered here, and to look at things in more depth. And I think we really need to look at this outside of a quick look at the plans for Bringley Road.
Thank you. I would like to speak against deferment, I think. It seems to me as if, judging by what members have said so far, that they are minded to sort of vote against this. I've heard very few, if any, comments from members recognising worth in the application. Just to balance that, I think there's one merit in it, in that it's sustainable. It's in a sustainable location. People could easily walk into the centre of the village for services. But overall, I too have reservations about its suitability as it currently stands. And it seems to me that if we defer, I'm not quite sure what else are we going to learn, other than we're going to find some information out about the other two applications. But that would then raise it to 11 houses, and Section 106 and affordable housing would kick in, which would be useful. But at the moment, we're saying, or appear to be saying, that the site is unsuitable for the house type being offered. So I'm not quite sure how we would change our minds on that, if that is our mind, our collective mind, by looking at the other two plans. Because if we go ahead and refuse tonight, that the developer has options, of course, to go to appeal or to resubmit. And perhaps the developer might listen to our concerns about the need to combine the three applications so that the committee has the full information for it. So there's a bit of me which was a strong bit of me which feels that we have heard enough information tonight on this side to make a determination, not least because, as Ms. Kingsley said at the beginning, she's never heard 6 speakers, and we've had the benefit of many speakers tonight at committee on this issue. So that's my view, but are there any other speakers on whether to defer or not? Councillor Richardson's got a hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I totally agree with you, Councillor Pidmore. My opinion, is voting the way I want to vote tonight and what I've spoken about. I think we take each application its own merit, and I know they're all wanting to add them all together, but we generally do have that rule of what application we take as it comes forward. So I'm not sure whether I'm struggling with that to realise that that's what we're supposed to do, and whether or not other applications, whether they belong to one developer or 3, do we not take each application as it is brought forward and not add them all together? That's my little worry at the moment, Councillor Pidwell. So although I do agree with not to defer him, because I think we shouldn't defer it, and I think, as you say, we have many members of the committee maybe will vote against. I don't know, but I have my own opinion, and I will vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps I ought to invite our solicitor to see if he has any advice on how to proceed on this, particularly around the aspect of can we take into consideration 2 unseen other applications. Okay, Mr. Wormald, sorry to put you on the spot, but do you have any advice to offer us on this?
Yeah, I mean, whether to take the other 2 into account isn't really my field of expertise. I think John would probably be better to advise on that. But in terms of procedure, you do have a proposer and a seconder for deferment. So, you are going to, as a committee, put that to the vote before you move on and either do defer or don't make a decision tonight.
Okay, fine. So, does anyone else want to speak on this proposal to defer before I go to the vote? No, okay then. So, we are voting on whether to defer the decision tonight to a later date. Councillor Challoner.
Against.
Councillor Charlesworth.
Against.
Councillor Fielding.
Against.
Councillor Freeman.
Against.
Councillor Oxby.
Against, thank you.
Councillor Quigley.
Against.
Councillor Richardson.
Against.
Councillor Sanders.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
For.
Councillor Tomlinson. Thank you. Councillor Tomlinson.
Against, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. And I too am against. So that the motion for deferment is lost. So we are back to the substantive issue of whether to give planning permission as recommended by the officers to this application. So let's compose ourselves and go round one more time to see if people want to make further comment before I summarise, and give Mr. Crozak an opportunity to comment as well. Councillor Challoner, you are first again.
Thanks, Chairman, and thanks to all members taking part in the vote, and thanks to Neil and Lynn for putting it forward as another topic which shows people out there that we are a democratic council. First of all, just like to make a comment, Chair, that I feel very strongly against the other two planning applications being shown in this, because it's not part of our agenda. We are here to discuss the item that we are discussing tonight. So the one part that I have picked up on, of which I think the people of Misterton, the parish council and everybody that's got together and made this neighbourhood plan over 3 years for it to come to fruition and for it to be passed through this district council. I think the windfall development has been abused and taken out of its initial context of what it was initially in the neighbourhood plan for, by obviously its integrity. And by applying for 4-bedroomed properties has been taken out of this, totally out of the perspective of this windfall development, and it's been tried to be railroaded through on this windfall development issue, of which the people took time to put this plan together, and they know the need because they are the local people. They know their neighbourhood better than us lot. And so at the end of the day, if they say there's a need for 3-bedroom properties, they know their area better than us. So a developer just coming through trying to use this windfall development to say, no, you're going to have 4-bedroom properties, I think has been totally taken out of the context of the windfall development initiative. So obviously that's just my summing up on that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Charlesworth, do you have any further comments to make?
I don't have no further comments. I totally agree with Councillor Challenger. Yeah, again, the nose right on.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fielding, any further comments?
No further comments, Chair.
Thank you. And in correct order, Councillor Freeman, do you have any further comments?
No further comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oxby.
No further comments, Chairman, now or at any other stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley.
No, thank you, Chairman. No further comments.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
No further comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one thing, if I may, I listened to what John was saying earlier about the mix, but it does state clearly in the neighbourhood plan the need for 3 and 4 bedroomed houses. So I'm struggling to understand why, just because it's a development of 9, that we would go away from them actually being 2 and 3 bedroomed houses when it is clearly stated in the neighbourhood plan. I'm just wondering whether a viability study is being done on this, and whether a viability study had actually been done on 2 and 3 bedroomed houses on the site.
Mr. Crozak, I don't know if you can help us with that.
the proposals for 9 dwellings, and we consider the 9 dwellings in compliance with the neighbourhood plan as I've previously outlined. In terms of the developers thinking, we're not aware. Generally, if a developer puts a site forward for development, they've got to be satisfied that it's a viable development. But in terms of the neighbourhood plan, I mean, I don't want to go over old ground, but again, it does specifically state where schemes are for more than 10 dwellings. They'll be supported where they would deliver a specific housing mix, but that is notably for 2 and 3 bedroom properties. But again, it says supported. It doesn't say that any other development would be refused. And again, we consider that policy 4 isn't triggered because it's a development of 9 dwellings, and the neighbourhood profile report specifically recommends detached brick-built dwellings in this zone. So from an officer perspective, that is our rationale behind the recommendation. Councillor Pidwell, I do apologise, I didn't respond to your previous question on windfall definitions. I don't know if you want me to do that now, or it was.
No, I'll ask you again later, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schuller.
Councillor Schuller, can you unmute your microphone, please?
I wasn't speaking, I didn't catch it. I'm finding it difficult to hear Councillor Pidwell at times, sorry. I did wonder if he'd said Councillor Schuller.
I did.
Apologies, David. I'm still struggling with the 2 to 3 bedroom housing need in the area, and the fact that we've got 4 bedroom detached properties, 9 4 bedroom detached properties being brought forward here. I think if we were looking at 2 to 3 bedroomed houses, and even if we looked at detached properties, we'd probably fit more than 9 in on this site. And as that is what is required in the neighbourhood plan, I think that we would be very remiss to actually look at this as a development that meets the needs of the community as laid out in a really robust neighbourhood plan, and a neighbourhood plan that had such rigour attached to its site allocation. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tomlinson, any final observations, comments?
I've got no further comments to add. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. To prolong things, sorry, I've got one further question, plus Mr. Crozat's going to talk about the windfall policy, particularly concerning the definition of windfall. He must have found an answer to it. But my other question, Mr. Crozat, is does paragraph 61 of the NPPF come into play here? I can't remember where I read it, but I did read it in one of the submissions, because that paragraph says that application should support a mix of housing based on current and future demographic trends. Now, it seems to me as if the most relevant policy here we're considering tonight is a neighbourhood plan. And throughout that, they clearly demonstrate that there's a need for smaller properties, for people to get a foothold in the private sector, to engage in social renting should they wish, and also for older people to downsize into. So does paragraph 61 get highlighted here? Is that a material planning consideration for this application?
In terms of paragraph 61, that obviously falls within section 5 of the NPPF, and that relates to delivering a sufficient supply of homes. So it has to obviously be read in conjunction with paragraph 60, which says to determine a minimum number of homes needed, strategic policy could be informed by local housing needs assessment, conducted using the standard method. So this is about policy making. And then paragraph 61 goes on to say, within this context, the size, type and tenure of housing needed for different homes in the groups in the community should be assessed and reflected in planning policies. So obviously the neighbourhood plan has policy 4, but their evidence base or rationale in making that plan decided that it's only necessary to trigger that at 10 or more dwellings.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, the windfall definition, you wanted to come back to that.
I just wanted to know if you wanted me to answer, because I neglected to answer that previously, and it's remiss of me. So, yeah, I think one of the speakers identified that the planning portal definition states that sites which have not been specifically identified as available in the local plan process, they normally comprise previously developed sites that have been unexpectedly becoming available. So that is normally comprising previously developed sites. There's no date on that definition, but I'd say the most up-to-date definition is a 2019 NPPF, and that simply defines windfall sites as sites not specifically identified within the development plan. So members obviously have a view on this, and I'm just giving you the officer's rationale and policy interpretation. And the windfall policy in the neighbourhood plan is supported by text that also refers to infill development, which we consider this would be, and again it lies within the development boundary. So, but that's the position of officers, and that's why the recommendation was formed as such.
Thank you very much. And did you want to come back to anything that the last round of comments elicited?
Nothing further, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so I propose we move to the vote if we're all done and dusted. 11 of us are taking the vote. So, Councillor Challoner, are you for or against? Thank you.
Against,
Councillor Charles. Thank you. You can only vote once. Councillor Charlesworth.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Fielding.
Against.
Councillor Freeman.
Against.
Councillor Oxby.
Against, thank you.
Councillor Quigley.
Against.
Councillor Richardson.
Against.
Councillor Sanders.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Schiller.
Against, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm against the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too vote against. So that application is lost. It's not granted. Thank you very much. But that's not the end of the matter, because we voted against our officer's recommendation, and we have to now discuss the reasons why we did so. And so I will go around and ask everyone why they voted against, and then I'll ask John if that's been useful and whether he can frame the decision notice accordingly. Okay, so Councillor Challoner.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, one of the first things that I spoke about is the very dangerous area of where that junction is going to be situated. I've got very, very serious concerns that highways have just more or less said, it seems okay. They haven't took everything into the context that technically it is a blind corner, and you will have slow vehicles exiting the junction, which can cause problems if there's vehicles coming up that side road that could be coming up at speed that know the area. And if you've got a complete stranger or even a lorry coming in with goods for the site or whatever, it could cause major problems. And to me, it's in a blind spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charlesworth.
Again, I agree with Councillor Challenger. It's to do with the road, the concerns of the traffic, the vehicles that are going to be using to be building on the roads. I just don't think it's suitable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fielding.
I would concur with colleagues that have spoken previously, but as I say, also it was the house type as well. It's contrary to what the neighbourhood plan would prefer to be built in and what the housing need for Misterton is.
Thank you. Councillor Freeman.
Yes, the access and also the neighbourhood plan. It wasn't you know, it wasn't about the neighbourhood plan that I'm not concerned about.
Okay. Councillor Oxby.
Thank you, Chairman. Similar to other speakers on the neighbourhood plan, could we ask John please to look at a suitable form of wording that this doesn't look at or take any cognizance of the neighbourhood plan at all? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, again, the neighbourhood plan, I think it doesn't marry with what the residents of Misterton intended with the neighbourhood plan, and my interpretation of it is obviously different to that of the officers, but I stand by my comments earlier.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Yes, mine's a neighbourhood plan, Chair. It's about the housing, the 2 to 3 bedroom houses, and I do understand how the officer has interpreted the policies and the way he's read them, and I do understand how they come to their decisions. But I'd interpret them a little bit different, I think, and from what I've heard from all the objectors and all the members this evening. So the neighbourhood plan is my concern and how it's been interpreted, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders.
Thanks, Chair. I concur with what's been said previously. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schuller.
I have nothing to add. I agree with the members that have already spoken.
Thank you. Councillor Tomlinson.
Can you unmute, please, Councillor Tomlinson?
Speech.
Councillor, can't hear you. No, you're still unmuted. I mean, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Tonight has been a long debate, but I think it can only strengthen the feeling and the democratic way of which the council and the planning committee go about their business in an open manner. So therefore, I think nothing but good can come for this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And yeah, I too think that it's contrary to the neighbourhood plan, particularly policy 1 and 5. And I'm not sure if the house type is representative of the area, really, given that the entrance to this development is through the small estate, which is made up of what appears to be 3-bed semi and detached. So I think that is the dominant house type in the area, notwithstanding the few detached houses opposite, which this site will be shielded from. Okay, So, Mr. Crozat, have we given you enough to form a basis of a decision notice?
In terms of, I was going to ask which policies members considered the proposal strictly contrary to. You've referred to 1 and 5, Councillor Pidwell. Yeah. Just allow us to frame just to ensure that the reasons are robust. So in terms of 5, are we saying it's contrary to one of the criteria within it, or would you like members saying this isn't windfall development that can be considered under policy 5?
In my view, it doesn't meet the definition of windfall. Unless, unless my view, other members might take a contrary view.
No, I agree with you on that one, Chair.
I agree.
I think the windfall's been totally taken out of its context. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
agree also.
Thank you.
And then, sorry, policy
1.
Yeah. So I'm reading policy 1. It says development will be supported where it can be shown such proposals would support continued sustainability of Misterton, and then list criteria. So it's new homes of a size tenure to meet local requirements, or so that's the element of that policy, is it?
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Brown described those as fundamental principles. There are 6, aren't there? And I don't think the application meets any of those. That's my reasoning.
Okay, so just sorry,
John.
Councillor Challoner. Go ahead.
All I'm going to do will just throw a bit of a curveball in on that one, Chair. That obviously, I know what people haven't spoke about tonight, but is the actual infrastructure of services within Misterton. It's all right, all these villages, outlining villages growing and growing, but obviously you've got to look at dentists, doctor surgeries, availability of school places and all things like that. So does that come under this policy 1, or what has been spoke about within the initial neighbourhood plan?
Well, that's interesting. Unfortunately, none of us raised that point in the discussion. So I'd imagine Mr. Crozat will say that we can't use it for a reason for refusal. That wouldn't be fair, would it, on the developer?
That'd be my recommendation, not to introduce everything. It wasn't obviously raised during the debate and hasn't been addressed by any members or myself, obviously.
No, that's my ruling anyway.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification anyway. Like I say, it was a curveball, John.
Just for clarification purposes, if we're saying that the development isn't windfall and we're not applying criteria in policy 5, we're a member saying it's contrary to DM4 of the local development framework, because obviously that policy is NPPF compliant, and development can be considered against that policy. It's the strategic policies that are out of date, and that states that development shouldn't be at any detriment to highway safety. So we'd fall back on that policy rather than the neighbourhood plan.
Well, yes, because highway safety was an issue, particularly around the junction, the access.
That's just a point of clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we you action to write something on the decision notice. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Pidwell, you've been breaking up. We'll obviously write some reasons for refusal based on members' comments, and that'll be presented to the planning consultation group, hopefully on Monday.
Lovely. Lovely. Monday or the one after. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time. I know it's been a long session, but I'd like you just please to bear with me because this is the last committee meeting of the council cycle. As someone said earlier, we've got the AGM coming up, and it's the AGM based on the advice of the party leaders that determines the makeup of this committee going forward. So I think it's only fair to thank all the members for their hard work over the last 2 years. We've been together for 2 years because of COVID. It is a hard committee, I think, to be on, not just in terms of the time commitment, but making the decisions. You know, we have quite a responsibility, and personally, I think we've discharged that responsibility diligently in our decision making. Of course, it's also a great honour to be part of a committee which shapes the future of Bassetlaw, you know, that brings new jobs, brings the right type of housing to an area, and protects the environment. And, you know, we've all done our bit in that this last 24 months. I would like to thank, if I may, my Vice Chair for her support and advice over the time. I'd like to thank the officers, the ones that we can see month in, month out, Mr. Wormwell, Mr. Crozak. I think we've had 3 facilitators and clerks in this period, James Lavender, Alan Inslee and Linda Dorr. So I'd like to thank them, but also a sort of special thanks to the IT staff who we don't see. And I really can't name them all who've helped us out. First of all, to train us. You know, none of us, well, most of us could not do this 15 months ago. So we've learned some new skills, and now it's sort of second nature to us. So thank you for making that transition. And yeah, so thank you to IT for training us and also for putting us on air every 4 weeks. So I hope to see you through the other side. I hope, well, I'm here as well, but I hope it's the same committee in a month's time at our next meeting that it is now. Okay, so that's it.
Chairman, may I just say thank you on behalf of all the committee for your professional capacity as chairman. I think you've done a wonderful job throughout the last 2 years. And I just want to say thank you to you and Sybil as well, Councillor Fielding, for all your work during the time when we don't see you, because I know you have meetings besides this one. So on behalf of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think we found out, I was going to mention John. John, if ever you decide to go on Mastermind, you're going to have to, there's a trouble deciding what your specialist subject's going to be. Because from the construction of the Chesterfield Canal to the capacity of car parks in Retford to how solar farms work, you are unfathomable. You know all the information. You get it spot on. It's at your fingertips. It's been one of the joys of chairing committees. So thank you, John, in particular, for your hard work. Okay, so thank you very much, and good night to you all.
Good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Chair.
Good night. Good night.
Thanks, Chair. Good night.